Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, hold on. I gotta get back. Hold on. All right. All right, folks, here we go. It is Friday, April 24th, 2026. I'm Candace Kelly, and I'm sitting in for Roland. I hope he's enjoying his time off. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network. White majority counties could hijack the majority black counties in North Carolina's water supply. Enfield Mayor Mondale Robinson is here to explain how data centers are at the center of this water heist. And South Carolina's Gullah Geechee community is demanding the return over 7,000 acres of land that once belonged to their enslaved ancestors. We'll be speaking to two local activists about why this land should be given to descendants. And this week, we continue to address the epidemic of fatal domestic violence by focusing on the underlying issues that lead to these tragedies. Tonight, we are diving into how to prevent intimate partner violence, especially when it comes to young people. It is time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, so North Carolina is currently experiencing a historic drought, raising concerns about the establishment of what are called data centers across the state. Now, these facilities require significant amounts of water to cool their servers, and estimates suggest that a single data center could consume up to 2.5 million gallons of water each day. So in response to these water demands, a local bill is being considered that would allow predominantly white counties to draw water from predominantly black counties to address these particular water shortages. One impacted area is Enfield, North Carolina, and Mayor Mondale Robinson joins us now to talk about everything that's going on. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for standing in for Ro as he gets some time to decompress and be with family. So I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so for people who don't understand what these data centers are, tell me, because it is a huge processing center that needs lots of energy, and that's where the water comes in. How would you explain it on the basic 101 course level?
Listen, for so many reasons, data centers are done improperly and they are bad. They create all types of harms to communities where they are, the noise, the use of water, the diesel energy, all of that to power it. But I would say centering data centers in this moment missed the mark. It would be a local bill if it was just Franklin County trying to pass this at Franklin County. Here's the problem. The bill that we're talking about has made its way to the General Assembly of North Carolina. It is Senate Bill 214, and particularly Section 5, which basically strips the right of North Carolina majority black, three of North Carolina majority black counties: Halifax, which is the county where Enfield rests, 56% black, Warren, and also Vance County. And this white county, Franklin County, which is 70% white, is now saying through their Senate legislation representation that they should have the right to any property, not just water. It says property in that section, and interest in that property through condemnation. So they could condemn any property in these other counties without the consent or approval of elected officials in said counties. This is tragic, and it's also as American as apple pie.
You're right. So when we talk about the history of what white communities take from black communities, this is the apple pie kind of analogy that you've been referring to. What should people know about this bill in terms of whether or not it has support and what you're doing in order to try to fight it in a meaningful way?
Yeah, so right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sound the alarm. This is why I came to Roland first, because if we're talking about how Black people hear what's affecting us that the world might not be talking about, this is where we should be at first. So we need people talking about this because this is a civil rights issue. This is a stripping issue and also if these conservatives are really concerned about property rights, how are they supporting this? So what I need people to do is to understand that next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, the North Carolina State Senate plans on voting on this issue. And if it passed, it goes to the House. And if it passed the House, it becomes law. Because guess what? It is a local bill at the state level, and North Carolina local bills at the state level that are passed through the legislature do not and prevent the governor from being able to veto it. So even though there's a Democratic governor who may want to veto this bill, he will not have that ability because of how this bill is stricken, and it does not apply to the entire state, just a simple region. This is dangerous, and it's setting a precedent that say that white people who want things can use this tool to take it away from Black majority counties. This is disgusting. It is a civil rights fight. It takes away the humanity of my residents and residents in Vance and also throughout the rest of Halifax and Warren County. And we shouldn't sit idle as if this is something small. This is how they are testing what they can do and where they can do it at. So people should understand that this is not a time to be afraid of what's next because it's here now.
And as you said, this is more than just about a drought. All hands on deck. What do you want people to do right now in order to show their concern, to show their disgust with what's going on?
Yeah, people need to be calling senators in North Carolina, whether they're in North Carolina or not, screaming about how disgusting this is as an act. Why are you trying to take and tell the voters through their representation at the county level in these counties that it does not matter what they want. It does not matter what their wishes are. These white people need something, and it is superior to what you desire and need in your own county.
We're going to bring the panel in now. I know that they have questions for you. I'm joined tonight by Michael Imhotep. He's the host of the African History Network show. Also, Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, author and co-founder and editor-in-chief of Max Black Media. And Rebecca Carruthers. She's president and CEO of the Fair Election Center. Rebecca, I want to start with you. Questions for the mayor. I think you're muted.
Good evening, Mayor. What are things that different organizations could do to support you?
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you so much. And I know people may not know this, but Halifax County is one of the poorest counties. It's an old county. It's actually the first place in America that said we want to be free from England. The Halifax Resolve happened well before the Constitution and all of that was written. So people have a deep hunger for freedom. Of course, Black people were not included in that idea of freedom. So what we need from other organizations is to any resources that you can provide to help us sound the alarm about this, any resources to help us get people from Halifax County. We're taking two busloads of people from Halifax County to Raleigh on Tuesday to be there so they can see that this is not sitting well with folk. So anything to help us get the noise out and also provide comfort for folk in this moving them from Halifax County to the capital. We are here for that. And also calling the state legislature and burning up their phones and letting them know, hell no, not on our watch.
All right, Dr. Jones DeWeaver, question.
Yeah, following up on that, I mean, North Carolina is one of those states where you have this split here politically between a governor that one could argue may be more amenable. We're not sure about what's going on at with the legislature. So it's a very purple state. What do you see as your best prospects for being able to get someone to step in and make a change here so that the rights of your citizens and Black citizens specifically can be respected in this manner?
Yeah, and unfortunately for us, the governor, even though he may be amenable to our cries and our harms about this is not only a property right, it is a dehumanizing factor for my people, for Black people, not just in where we are, but across this state. It's showing us that we don't matter as much as our white neighbors. So even if he was amenable, he couldn't do anything because of how this is set up. We need to change these Jim Crow-esque laws so that his grandson, James Crow Esquire, can't continue the long legacy of preventing black people from having full life. That happens, though, only as a result. I'm sorry, that happens only as a result of elections. We need to rethink and think broader than these gerrymandered districts that prevent black people from having an accurate voice across our state. We do that by turning out voters that don't normally participate.
That's right, and that's why you are sounding the alarm on this. Let's go to Michael. Michael, question for the mayor.
Hey, Mayor Mondale, good to see you again. So my question is twofold. One, in the state legislature there in North Carolina, could you let us know who controls the state house, who controls the state senate, number one? Number two, what are the justifications? I know you talked about the justifications of those who say own the data centers, but the people in the state legislature that are going to vote for this, right? What are their justifications to say, oh, you can take water from African-American, predominantly African-American counties, okay, but they wouldn't allow the reverse to take place?
Yeah, I mean, we know what the justification is. It's the same justification that told that white man that lived on Pennsylvania at the White House that he could turn on the East Wing without anybody's permission. It is the idea of whiteness and their life matters more than anybody, especially black people. America has a high tolerance for black suffering. So I think the justification is just that. America has a history, 400-plus year history of making sure white people are comfortable, even if it's at the expense of black lives. And I think that's where it rests. They would never, not only would they not allow black people to take the resources from this majority white county, they wouldn't even let this county, Franklin, try to take water from Carr Lake, and they stopped that and prevented that because white people enjoy that lake. They're fishing, they're swimming, they're hiking and kayaking on that lake, and they said you will not have more access to this lake. So their backup plan, I guess, was, well, you can't have it from this natural resource that we call Carr Lake, but you can have it from those black folk down south.
So what at the end of the day does this look like to you in terms of a satisfactory answer to deal with the drought, the water problem? What are your council proposals and what you are telling them needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, so right now we've done resolutions at the county level, and the town of Enfield done its own resolution. But I think what needs to happen, first of all, we need to do away with this idea that legislators can pass things without the governor having the right to veto it. That is as old and as racist as the filibuster in the United States Senate. We need to get rid of that thing too, that tool too. But what is a satisfaction action at this moment is that, one, all legislators that are elected by the people of North Carolina vote against this, even the person who introduced it. They need to shoot this down and say that we will not ever tell residents in North Carolina that your rights are sub to someone else's right simply because somebody wants to make a dollar.
All right. Remind us once again of the vote is taking place next week. Give us the time, details once again before we go.
April the 28th, Tuesday at 4 p.m. at the Raleigh Capitol, it'll take place, and we're trying to pack it out with people from these counties to make sure that they know that it is bad.
All right, Mayor, I want to thank you so much. Listen, without people like you, we would not know about this because these aren't headlines that are across the country. You are the one that are making these things happen. So we will have you back on to get an update, I'm sure, as I'm sure there will be one. All right, hopefully it will go your way. Thank you and good to see you.
You too. Peace and blessing.
All right, still to come on Roland Martin Unfiltered, preventing intimate partner violence. We're going to continue our conversations about the epidemic of fatal domestic violence. But first, the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee wants to investigate the Southern Poverty Law Center, which was hit recently with an 11-count indictment. That story is next here on Roland Martin Unfiltered, only on the Black Star Network. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, I'm T.D. Jakes, and you are watching the Black Star Network.
All right, so as we reported to you with breaking news on Tuesday, we told you that the Southern Poverty Law Center was hit with an 11-count indictment by a federal grand jury in Alabama. Now the House Judiciary Committee has sent a letter to SPLC President Brian Fair, letting him know that it's not just the Justice Department looking into this organization. In a letter, the committee chair, Representative Jim Jordan, demanded that the SPLC hand over a trove of documents showcasing where the money went and, perhaps more importantly, any communications with the administration and former President Joe Biden. Now, the SPLC has until April 30th, that's just next week, to turn over this requested documentation. The Department of Justice charged the organization with several counts of wire fraud, false statements to a federally insured bank, and conspiracy to commit money laundering, alleging the group defrauded donors for more than a decade. Listen, Michael, all of this ridiculous, but I want your thoughts about what is going on here and what Jim Jordan is doing.
Well, Jim Jordan is doing the bidding of Donald Trump and the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists and white nationalists that Donald Trump gave a pardon to because they were involved in the January 6th insurrection. The headline from the New Republic says it best. The Justice Department sides with the Ku Klux Klan. That's the name of the article from the New Republic that talks about the charges coming from Trump's Justice Department. So this is now the other thing that's interesting, and you did a great job in breaking this story down. I did watch that segment from a couple of nights ago. The Southern Poverty Law Center had a history of working with the Department of Justice, right?
Sure.
To provide evidence and things like this against these organizations. Here you have this white nationalist Department of Justice, right? That's trying to attack these groups. And they're not going to stop with the Southern Poverty Law Center. I think they're going to go after the NAACP and other civil rights organizations as well. So this is more nonsense. But keep in mind, this is things that are laid out in Project 2025, attacking organizations like this. Okay, so there's going to be more of this to come, but we're going to have to fight against this.
Yeah, and you know what, Dr. Jones-DeWeaver, we talked about this the other evening, and we talked about the fact that this probably is a precedent for more to come. What are your thoughts about this request for this trove of documents? They want it by next week as quickly as possible, all when we know that historically the Department of Justice has worked hand in hand with this particular organization in order to make people safer.
Well, let's just remind everyone that the President of the United States is the son of a Klansman. This is fact. His father was arrested at a Klan rally. Okay, so this is who we're talking about. We're also talking about someone whom during his very first term, you had a historic rise in the number of hate groups in this nation. You're also talking about someone who pardoned as part of the January 6th rioters, a huge bulk of whom were Proud Boy members, a known hate group. you know, you can draw the lines together and come to the only logical conclusion, which is this is a Justice Department that is rife with white supremacists and are doing everything that they can to protect white supremacists while at the same time fight those people who fight against white supremacists. This is also the same Justice Department who basically went in there and fired, if you look at the Civil Rights Division specifically, completely gutted the Civil Rights Division and have instructed them to make appeals towards white men to come to them to say that they're the ones that are being discriminated against. This is a bizarro world that we're living in right now in the Department of Justice. Shout out Super Friends, okay? So you understand what I'm talking about here. So what we're seeing right now is just the tail wagging the dog, where we have white supremacists who now have power and are doing everything that they can now to attack all of those who have fought against them for literally decades before.
And let me just follow up with you, something so important that you said. We know that just last week that there was a request to excuse those from the January 6th events. And so this seems to be kind of par for the course and what makes sense. It looks exactly what it looks like it's supposed to be doing. And that is, let's dismantle anything that has to do with anything that has to do with civil rights. And as you mentioned, this is nothing new. This is nothing new at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, let me move on to you, Rebecca. What are your thoughts about just this whole idea that here we are in this situation where you have this civil rights organization that has laid down the law over the decades in order to make so many things happen in terms of the safety of the United States of America. And this indictment in particular talked about something so ridiculous. It's not as if you have somebody that's going to infiltrate a group, your check is not going to come from the Southern Poverty Law Center. You have to create some type of a back end to make sure that their identities are not discovered. That's the whole point of infiltrating a group. None of it makes sense.
So I lead a national civil rights organization. It's a voting rights organization, Fair Election Center. And my organization issued a statement in support of SPLC based upon the indictment that came out this week. Fair Election Center and many of the other civil society organizations, we stand with them because we understand the attack on civil rights in this country. In fact, we actually co-litigate with SPLC on voting rights issues across the South. In fact, on Monday, I'm testifying in front of Congress with SPLC, with LDF, with MALDEF, with AAJC in support of voting rights in this country. And so we have known and we have prepared. We understand what's at stake. We understand how hostile this administration is. And we also understand that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We do know after this administration is over, there's going to have to be a lot of accountability. We're going to have our version of the Nuremberg trials to really unearth all of the anti-civil rights violations that this administration has done and will continue to do unless there's a change.
Can't hear you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. No, you can't hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
What was your question?
As we wrap, and I can hear my echo, I'm not sure if everybody else can, but I was just wanting you to remind the audience of when you will be testifying.
Monday at 2 p.m. in front of the House Administration Committee.
All right, thank you for that update. And we're going to fix our technical issues. If anybody is hearing that out there, I know I'm hearing them on my end. Stay with us here on the Roland Martin Network. We'll be right back.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Yes, there you go. Hey, what do you want me to do?
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League, and I'm watching the Black Star Network.
Plantations and markets that once sold African slaves still exist today. These locations have been repurposed as wedding venues and tourist destinations. While they offer romanticized views of the South, for the Gullah Geechee people, they serve as a painful reminder of the suffering endured by their ancestors. This community of descendants of slaves are now demanding that over 7,000 acres of plantation land be returned to them. And joining me now are Marcus McDonald of Black Lives Matter, Charleston, and Akua Page, a historian and co-founder of the Charleston Reparations Task Force. Thank you so much for being with us today. Akua, let me start with you. Can you explain to people what is the situation, the backstory that they should know about in terms of how we got to this demand for this 7,000 land acres?
Yeah, so it really started once they brought us here. And if we look back at the Special Field Order number 15, which that was really the first form of reparations. Most people know it as 40 acres and a mule, but after slavery, it was land that was given to Black people once that happened. But then less than 6 months later, that process was reversed. So it's not really like we're asking for our reparations. It's really what we're demanding that they just return what was already rightfully ours and what was stolen from us. And that just started when, honestly, like, slavery began. You know, you had people on agriculture plantations, if we technically look at it, and none of our ancestors were compensated for that land. Even if we look back now and look at all these plantations that make so much money off of plantation weddings, off of events, which is really like you're getting married at a crime scene. And so we're really just asking for, really demanding for all of that land be returned to the people who literally died there, blood, sweat, and tears on that land and that property.
Wow, getting married at a crime scene. I like that analogy. Marcus, let me turn this over to you. What are the some of the legal arguments and strongest arguments that you have to get this land back? What will that process be like?
Well, I won't pretend to be a lawyer, but I will say that there was recently a UN declaration on slavery being one of the worst acts of humankind. So that is one of the legal documents and one of the legal, that most of the world has supported. And it'll really be up to a lot of the families who descended from the same families that enslaved my descendants and a lot of the descendants of the Gullah Geechee people and the people who live in the city and who live in this county, and really who live all over the nation, who descend from here. Those same families are the ones who own this land. And again, as Akua said, making millions of dollars a year. Middleton Plantation specifically made over $9 million in 2021 after the racial reckoning, after the murder of George Floyd. They are getting the money. So, I mean, just imagine the discrepancies when we see our communities getting ethnically cleansed from the peninsula and from the different areas where you used to see a lot of Black folks. They call it gentrification, but we're starting to call it ethnic cleansing because that's really what it is. And this is an action to reverse that, or an action to gain what, from the land that we labored on, and from stolen labor, and not only from slavery, but also Jim Crow, because a lot of our peoples work at the phosphate mines at Middleton Plantation. Some of these plantations still working for these same people under sharecropping. And that's a story a lot of people share, just sharecropping, even into the 1900s. Like, there's people's grandmas who were sharecroppers. So that's even more recent history, that they were never paid or compensated and treated fairly. So that's a legal argument that is like that is like the basis of justice. If you are harmed, that harm should be repaired.
So the Gullah Geechee people have been fighting for years for many, many things. Tell me about this particular argument and the 7,000 acres of land, and what are the next steps in order to try to get it back? How are you galvanizing people? What are people saying? If you could take us to where you are.
Well, the next steps, honestly, is just to really demand that these plantations, who are still profiting, if you look back, not even they started with profiting from slavery, and now today they're really profiting off of that story of trying to like romanticize what plantations are. So the next step is really to demand that these plantations return over that land, or give us compensation for really stuff that's not rightfully theirs. So if you look at the gardens, is what some of these plantations around here they call it. If we look at who cultivated that landscape, if we look at the buildings, you can still see fingerprints on these buildings that were made by people who were enslaved on these plantations. So the next step is really for these plantations to do justice, just like how Marcus said, and he can speak more on that. Like this justice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Marcus, you wanted to jump in? Go ahead.
Specifically, go ahead. Yeah. 100% agree. Specifically on the bricks, there's still architectural remnants. Like, there's reminders of that every day that people see. So the response has been great from a lot of folks from the community locally, but also nationally and internationally. Because I believe the post that we did of the action video, it's over 40,000 views right now on Instagram, and it's been shared widely. There has been some news media posted about it on Holy City Center. Not only our statement, but also Mary, who is a descendant from the white side of the family, has also spoken in support of this demand. She's only one part of the family, but it shows that not only her, but her family, her mother, a lot of people in her family also agree with us on this statement. So that was released recently. Her statement is, again, it's available on Holy City Center. But there's a lot of grassroots support, people reaching out to us who either worked at the plantation before or have done things at the plantation, or just have some type of relation of seeing it and wishing something better was done than just what's being done right now, which is white ownership and Black folks getting symbols and different crumbs of just recognition, but not real ownership and not real tangible justice for the harms they'll cause on our ancestors and even our grandparents who had to go through Jim Crow in Charleston. That was never repaired either. And in Charleston, there was whole race mobs where they hunted us down in 1919 of the Red Summer. And that's not like my great grandmama was alive, who I met, and I was around when she was alive. And again, that is part of the history, like that repair that has to be a full and holistic repair. And we give them 40 days, so they have a 40-day deadline. So June 8th.
Okay, so talk to me about that 40-day deadline. What are you requesting? What is this 40-day deadline about?
The deadline is for this negotiation to begin on the land transfer. That's the 40-day deadline is for that response on that land transfer and begin that negotiation. So that's the 40-day deadline. It gives them the chance to get their families together, come together as them, and be like, okay, we're going to give this up and do the right thing. And they decide to do a different thing. We have something coming for them, but yeah, that's the 40 days. It gives them a chance to do the right thing, come to the table.
So, Akua and Marcus, a lot of support online. You have a lot of support, certainly on the ground. For people who you want help from that are out there, that can give it to you, what would you request in terms of support, in terms of resources? Because you were beginning to get your wheels turning, and now we're in this 40-day process where you're looking for a land transfer soon.
Well, one thing.
I'll start with you.
Two things I'll say. Go ahead.
Okay, Marcus.
Okay, Can you go ahead?
Okay, now I'll pass to Akua next if I miss anything. But some of the main things we're asking right now is for a solidarity statement. So if you're part of a business, organization, group, or even a family, whether you're a descendant from, what plantation you're from, or just a descendant of enslaved people, you making a solidarity statement, even if it's your mama, auntie, cousin, and a few of y'all to just sign a statement to say that we support and send it to us, that would be it would make a huge difference in showing that there's a lot of grassroots support. We've already had some organizations locally and statewide that have already written their support. So that's the one thing they were asking for folks to do. We're on Instagram at Charleston for Reparations. So follow us and make sure you reach out to us. We will need some boots on the ground, volunteers, people to help organize as we begin some of the mass meetings with some of the Gullah Geechee neighborhoods and communities to collectively come together with a plan on how we're stewarding this land. And that work has been done over the last couple of years of us having Low Country Black Action Assemblies. So we'll have another one coming up soon. And one date that we have already lined up is May 15th from 5:35 to 7:35 at the Avery Research Center, which is at 125 Bull Street in Charleston, South Carolina. So if you want to learn more about that, learn more about this plan and how you can get more involved in reparations in general and specifically with this land transfer plan, you're welcome to come out to that. It's open to the people. And more information about that will
May
be
15th.
shared soon on our socials.
Okay, great. May 15th. Akua.
Yeah, just to add on what Marcus said, also just making sure that the rest of these plantations ban the process of plantation weddings. Because there's only one plantation, McLeod Plantation, out of all the various plantations we have in Charleston that actually has banned plantation weddings. So to me, that shouldn't take like a bazillion meetings, right? Like it's something simple to outlaw and ban plantation weddings, especially when none of that money and funds are going towards Gullah Geechee people. The other thing is just to make sure that there's proper interpretive signs. There's also an issue in Charleston where you go to visit these plantations, they like to romanticize slavery. Like, oh, look at the gardens, look at the flowers. Like they like to romanticize that as if like people weren't hanging from trees on these properties.
All right, I want to go over to my panel. Rebecca, a question for one of our panelists.
Sure. Akua, what you just said was really interesting, especially as you made a reference to strange fruit. Have you heard back from wedding planners? If wedding planners are willing to step in and say they refuse to plan weddings on plantations?
We have not, and I'm pretty sure they will be pushback because that's how most of them make like a bulk of their money, right? They actually have Instagram pages where if you type in Charleston weddings, 9 out of 10 they're going to be linked to a plantation. So like we have not heard back from wedding planners, but would definitely love for them to also sign in solidarity to support and also help push the message of like banning plantation weddings. Because as I just said like before, like you're getting married at a crime scene. Like regardless of how people try to like reword what it is, a plantation was a crime scene.
Dr. Jones-DeWeaver, a question for one of our guests.
Sure. I'm just wondering, what is the sort of escalation plan? Like, so, I hear the call for the turnover, the rightful turnover of this land. But, beyond after the meeting that you have, is there any sort of is there a legal strategy in place? You may have mentioned this, but I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, so it'll really be a public campaign and also a grassroots direct action campaign. There's some things that I'd rather not speak on live television or whatever platform this is, but not whatever platform, but some things we organize in person. But yeah, there will be some direct escalation, whether it be direct action like we've done before, showing up to this plantation and disrupting regular programming, because that's really what they care about at the end of the day. Is the money, even though they say they care about history and all this stuff, it's really that bottom line. So once we start disrupting that and really bring to the table on that end, it'll make it unprofitable for them to exist. So once they get to that point, they'll have to cede it over. So that's hopefully they'll come to the negotiation table before that. But yeah, that is part of the plan, and we do have a lot of experience with that. So we're ready to take it there if need be, for sure.
All right, Marcus and Nicole. I have so many questions about this, but I'm just going to try to keep this brief. Because as a historian, you know, I have so many questions. But I'm going to just try to keep this brief, okay? So I read your press release, and you talk about the 7,000 acres of land that are owned by the 3 former slave plantations. Now, I know Sister Kua mentioned Special Field Order number 15 from 1865, and it was 400,000 acres of coastal land in South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia that were allocated to African American former slaves. Was these 7,000 acres of land, I'm just curious, were these part of that was actually allocated, formerly owned by Black people? I missed it if you said that previously. Forgive me for that.
Cool.
Hey, I can.
I'm not sure the specific.
I can hear.
Cool. You want to take that question?
Can you repeat the question, please? I couldn't hear it.
Yes, sister. So I read your press release that came out April 22nd.
Yeah, I had trouble hearing you.
It talks about the 7,000.
I can hear everybody else besides Michael. I'm not sure what happened just now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Well, can you hear me? Because I can repeat it.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so pretty much what he was saying was that the special order that you mentioned, where there was coastal land, they're supposed to be given to Gullah Geechee and Black folks. What was that? Do you know if Middleton and those plantations were part of that coastal land or no?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I just know it started with Charleston, South Carolina, and it went all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. But it also included any rice plantations in between. So I'm pretty sure like most of the plantations that's on the coast would have been included in that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Michael, I know you have a follow-up question, and I'm gonna give you the time.
I got a bunch of questions. I've covered stories like this on the African History Network show. Okay, so a lot of white people are fascinated with the movie Gone with the Wind from 1939, and the movie Gone with the Wind has done a disservice when it comes to really understanding the history of slavery in this country. It's really worked to really desensitize people or try to. It makes it into some type of fantasy for white people, right? So. I'm just curious, have you had conversations with some of these people, some of these white people on these plantations that profit from this, to ask them, you know, do you really understand what took place here? Do you understand that you were making millions of dollars off of the dehumanization and enslavement of African people? Because one of the things they'll say is, oh, this is the quarters where the workers live. No, that's where the slaves live.
Marcus, I'll throw that to you. I don't know if Akua heard it, but I can also translate for her. But I'll start with you, Marcus.
Yeah, so I'll take us back to a conversation that, I mean, the first time me and Akua went to Middleton Plantation together, we did speak to one of the tour guides. And I remember we'd already had the plan to start the Charleston Reparations Task Force. And we asked them, you know, about this, you know, the amount of land they had and the amount of money that they made, they being like the original plantation owners. And he was like, the plantation owners at the time, the only comparable like people of money you could compare it to of today would be like the Prince Saudis and the oil barons of today. I'm like, oh wow, that's wild. People say that. And then the next thing we asked him, next sentence, he was like, so how do you feel about reparations? And if I'm lying, I'm flying. I swore to you, he said this to both of us. He was like, well, can't just give people money. And I think in my memory, I blacked out because I don't even know what I said. But I was like, oh, okay. And then again, that was like 2 years later. So I think maybe that would confirm in my head, oh, we got to plan something soon. But yeah, now he said that verbatim to our face. When we went to that Middleton, specifically plantation, and went on that tour guide. So yes, they're still on that, you know, type of timing, teaching that type of history. Like, yeah, they got all this money, but as far as the current day, there's not that connection to what need to happen on the current day. So some of it,
we don't remember the hundreds of years.
Did you follow up with the? So, brother, brother Marcus. So, did you follow up with the 5 forms of? Did you follow up with the 5 forms of reparations from the United Nations International Human Rights? Did you break down the 5 forms of reparations still? Because it just boggles the mind how people get caught up in the opulence and they get caught up in Big Daddy on the plantation and the mistress slept here and all types of things like this. It's like they're totally disconnected from what was actually taking place on the plantation.
Let me bring Akua here because she doesn't hear your question.
I'm sorry.
Akua, what are your thoughts about people who you have spoken to and how they feel about these ideals about Gone with the Wind, for example, our panelist was saying, and how they're really misconstrue and understand history? When you speak to them up close and personal, what is it that they're saying about how they feel about this history and reparations and why it's so glorified and not the bloodbath that it was?
Right. Well, when I encounter certain people, I always use it as a teachable moment. But for most of them, I think there's like I know it's like a disconnect. And I guess that can be their way of not feeling like we deserve reparations or to separate themselves, because technically that is their ancestors who like enslaved my ancestors. So that's why it's easy to like glorify. Because I even had a person told me, well, a plantation was just a farm. And I had to break it down to her, well, what was happening on that farm? You know, they were growing food. Who's growing the food? And were those people compensated for growing that food? No, they were actually not compensated. They were tortured, abused, unalive. So I use it as a teachable moment, but there's also a lot of miseducation. But I'm pretty sure that this works to have that that mentality that we don't deserve reparations because slavery wasn't that bad. Like that's kind of the message that a lot of these plantations are even going. I had a person who came on a tour, and they even said on the tour guide, they told them that the slave masters treated their slaves kind at certain plantations. So we know like that's a lie, because if you're owning another human being, there's no kind of kindness or generosity with that.
You are doing amazing work.
Part of the lost cause. I'm sorry.
Can I ask you, Akua and Marcus, about the work that you're doing? Who's on the ground with you? Do you have people? We know that meeting is coming up, and I want you to remind us at the end of this segment where people can come. But who is doing the groundswell of the work here? What are your own resources? Because I know that you are getting things going, and I'm sure you want more people to join you in this cause.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot of grassroots work going specifically around the county. So Charleston County's wide. We have some folks, Boone Hall, for folks who don't know, is on the Mount Pleasant side, which is on the eastern side. And then we have like West Ashley, which is on the west side, of course. And that's where Middleton, Magnolia are. So the land, Gullah Geechee Reservation that we're planning would be non-contiguous, because it'd be like Boone Hall on this side, they would be also turned into the reservation, and then Middleton, Magnolia on this side, which would be turned into the reservation. So we've gotten in touch with a lot of descendants, people who, including myself and my family, who descendants from Boone Hall. Our descendant there was Peter Porche, and yeah, we descended from Boone Hall, and a couple of the organizers out there, they're called settlement and Gullah Geechee communities out close to Boone Hall. There's a lot of people who came from these places, and there's also Akua can tell better the story of Liberty Hill and other neighborhoods that still like know directly, like, yeah, we came from this plantation and we set up our neighborhoods here. So there's a lot of people who have those direct connections that we've been talking with and community with, and they think it's a great idea. I've heard from an elder, and I'll pass it off, but I heard from an elder today who I've worked with for years, but he was like, that's a great idea. And I was like, I wish you'd have told me about this 15 years later. I would have done it myself. So yeah, we've gotten a lot of intergenerational feedback from a lot of our elders, a lot of Black folks from our age, and even some white folks who's been like, yo, we'll support, so let us know where we need to fill in. So if we need to get more, definitely helping with those statements and getting that out. But there has been like a lot of groundswell support in the downtown area, but also around the county and Mount Pleasant and in West Ashley, and people who live close to it. These plantations. And
Akua, any legislators, any politicians, anybody who's can move something in terms of legislation?
That's still in the works. There's nobody who's as like active and vocal as of yet. So we're gonna put that out there, but that's still in the works.
All right. Before we go, just a couple more questions. Take us down to the Gullah Geechee community and let people know why it is so important. Obviously, this is land that was taken. This was land that belongs to us. But in terms of the preservation of the community and making sure that we get what is ours, Akua, how would you describe why this is so important at the end of the day for generations to come, to have all of this and preserve the culture that we have brought here?
I believe it's so important, especially for Charleston to really like be pushed out there and to lead that charge with reparations, because Charleston was the capital of the slave trade. Like when people look up slavery, research slavery, it points back to Charleston. It was the capital. And so in order to really heal from all that has happened, you have to start the repair process. And that starts with reparations. That starts with transfer of land, giving back to the people. Because essentially you cannot have Gullah Geechee people without land. We're people of like land, water. Like that's how we was able to give birth to a whole new culture when we were brought over here, which Gullah Geechee people were really just a mixture of different West and Central Africans that were forced to come together, and they had to give birth to a whole new culture. And a lot of that culture wouldn't be possible especially American culture, if it was not for Gullah Geechee people. And when people look at rice in America, that would not be possible was it for Gullah Geechee people. But now you go all over the United States, some cultures are always eating rice. But we were the ones who brought that over here. And so it's so important that we preserve this history and preserve this culture, because we are really one of the backbones of America.
Yeah, folks, Google rice in South Carolina. You're going to be going on a deep dive for a few hours there just to understand the connections. Marcus, I am going to give you the last word. Remind everybody of that meeting, the time, I believe it was May 15th, and where they should go.
Yeah, so it'll be May 15th. And beautiful words again, cool. I ain't gonna say nothing much more than where to go. But we're having a reparations conversation, Charleston Reparations Task Force. You can find us on Instagram at Charleston for Reparations. The conversation will be May 15th, 5:30 to 7:30 at the Avery Research Center, which is at 125 Bull Street. It's a historical Black archive, so make sure you pull up even if you can't make it for that conversation. Again, it's Avery Research Center, and we'll be talking about this land transfer plan and reparations in Charleston. So make sure you pull up. Yeah.
All right. Marcus McDonald and Akua Page, thank you so much for being with us, giving us an update. It is just the beginning. I know there is more to come, and we'll be thinking about you, and make sure you keep us informed about all your steps along the way, okay?
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. All right, you are watching the Roland Martin Unfiltered Network. We are going to be right back here on the Black Star Network, so stay with us.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, a relationship that we have to have. We're often afraid of it and don't like to talk about it. That's right, we're talking about our relationship with money. And here's the thing, our relationship with money oftentimes determines whether we have it or not. Balancing your relationship with your pocketbook, that's next on A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Swing Cash, Basketball Hall of Famer, and you're watching Black Star Network.
right. Throughout this week, we have dedicated time addressing the epidemic of fatal domestic violence by focusing on the underlying issues that can lead to these tragedies. We've discussed how to identify if you are in an abusive relationship, the steps needed to leave one, the healing, and then the process of survivors of domestic, the process for survivors of domestic abuse. Now, tonight, our focus is on prevention, and journalist Jeff Johnson, he made a heartfelt plea.
This morning, I'm not coming in with answers. I'm coming in heavy. I've been sitting with some since last week. We've seen multiple tragedies in Virginia and Louisiana. Families shattered, women, children, babies gone. And I'm struggling, not just because of the pain those families are in, but because each of these cases, it's Black men at the center of the harm. And before anything else, my heart is with those families, especially the children who lost parents and families who lost babies. That kind of loss changes everything, and it really should change us. But we also can't pretend that these are isolated incidents. This is happening too often across the country, and the conversations that I'm hearing right now, especially online and in social, is forcing us to a place where only one thing can be true at a time. And what I've seen in comments and commentary troubles me, that men are the monsters, narcissists, and simply selfish. And there's truth there, that Black women and children are the victims, totally facts. But there isn't much complexity used to assess terribly complex domestic and family dynamics. And that if you bring up mental and emotional health, it's almost like you're making excuses for men and denying accountability, justice, and ultimate protection that our women deserve. And I don't accept that, because both things are true. These men are responsible. Full stop. And we have to be honest about how a man can get to that point. I don't know what makes you kill your children. And ignoring mental and emotional health doesn't create accountability. It potentially creates more funerals. And so here's what I need our brothers to hear. Unhealed men are dangerous, not just to ourselves, but to the people who love and surround us most. And too often, that's Black women and our children. Now, if we're going to be real about solutions and not just proclamations, we have to talk about what's underneath this. And part of it is structural. For generations, policies and systems in this country have disrupted Black families, separated us, criminalized us, and weakened the relationship between Black men and women. And that didn't just disappear. Some of that damage we're now carrying. And if we're not intentional, we can and do end up playing it out on each other. And part of it is personal and clinical. Despite increased resources, we continue to have generations of men dealing with undressed trauma, emotional isolation, and no real pathway to healing. We've continued to normalize silence. We've continued to normalize being strong, but we haven't yet normalized being well or making thriving an aspiration. And that combination is dangerous. So if we know our mental and emotional health impacts how we show up for us, our families, our relationships, our communities, then healing can't be optional. It's a responsibility, and we have got to be accountable to that. So brothers, this is on us. Checking on each other is not enough anymore, because a lot of us ask, "You good?" But we don't know what to say or do when the answer is no, or worse, hell no. We need tools. We need more spaces and knowledge to create them. We need more accountability rooted in love. We need circles where men can be honest and be supported towards healing, because if we don't heal, we risk turning our pain into harm. So I'm not trying to solve this in one morning show segment. I don't have all those answers. But what I'm saying is this: we need to talk about this and move differently and consistently. Over the next few weeks, I'm opening up a series during my morning show segment, Men Thrive Mondays. We're going to unpack this: mental and emotional health, trauma, masculinity, relationships, and how we actually build healthy circles for our brothers. And I want to bring clinicians, brothers doing the work, real solutions, because this is not about reacting to these two disgusting tragedies. It's about preventing the next one. And if you're a mental health or emotional health professional, I need your help. When we see a man isolated, shutting down, or spiraling, what are the steps we need to take to actually support? Not theory, real steps that we can use to save lives. And there are organizations like Black Men Heal, Therapy for Black Men, BEAM, that are already doing this work and connecting brothers to real help. If we're serious about healing, then men doing the work is not optional. It's a responsibility. Accountability is part of protecting our sisters, but it's not the whole answer. If we don't also heal the trauma men carry, we'll keep showing up broken in the very relationships we are called to protect. That's what I got for y'all this morning.
All right, we need more of those conversations, and this is why we continue the conversation here tonight on this network. Joining me now are Amari Barksdale and Kamila Johnson from Detroit's Sasha Center, which focuses on training young people to prevent intimate partner violence. So, first of all, welcome to the both of you. I know that this is something that we've been talking about in the context of adults, but let's face it, any of these adults that we've been talking about, they were once young people, and we need to understand what to do with young people in terms of their exposure, responsibility, and how they begin to develop healthy relationships at a younger age. Let me speak to you first, Amari. Let me ask you, what are some of the numbers that we need to know in terms of young people and violence within their relationships, because it is very prevalent?
You know, we like numbers, but we're careful about numbers because of how numbers can be skewed or how numbers can look when not properly put in place. So what we do know is that we will be very surprised to see how many young people, specifically young women, experience violence at the high school age. The college age, it ramps up even more. But we tend to think of our young folks as just being young and having fun and enjoying their new experiences in love and dating, when in actuality, the very scary thing behind it, and Kalima could probably chime up on a little bit more on this, but the very scary thing is that our daughters, a lot of them are experiencing domestic violence. Intimate partner violence, dating violence, we like to call it for that age, in the hallways of their schools, out on dates, in the car, walking home from school together. They're experiencing it in the high school age. And we have to be honest about it, and we have to look at it, and we have to really be serious enough to admit that it's happening in order to address it.
So Kamila, how do we get young people whose brains are still developing to recognize something like power and control inside of a relationship? What does that look like?
I'm so glad you asked, and my name is Kalima, and we are from the Sasha Center.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, it's cool. And we at the Sasha Center here in Detroit believe that engaging young people requires an opportunity for us to meet them exactly where they are, and creating spaces where they can literally have these conversations. And at the Sasha Center, we partner with organizations that specialize in working with the youth, like 1124, which is an organization here that works with people between the ages of 16 and 25 years of age. And what they have taught us and what we know and how we partner with them is, giving students, young people, an opportunity to really process what it means to be in relationship. Because a lot of young people are learning about relationships by being and watching their relationships at home. And so a lot of times they don't know how to really share what they're seeing at home. And what they're seeing at home is not necessarily always healthy. But in dating relationships, the young people that are with us and with our groups, they're talking about who pays for dates, believe it or not. They're being influenced by social media and watching and paying attention to how they think gender roles are supposed to be set up. But I really want to be clear, and I want to back this up a little bit and talk about our culture, talk about Black, talk about how we show up to understanding our relationships. And there are some really key critical things in prevention that we have really not unpacked as a people. And so when I saw your earlier segment, I was really super excited about you all talking about culture, because what's important and what I think we should really talk about tonight as well is the fact that in Black community, we have not had a chance to unpack the trauma of lynching in this country and the trauma of women not even having an opportunity, and girls, to navigate and have autonomy of their bodies. Our bodies were commodity. If they had access to us, we had to have babies for them, and that's how they made money. Bottom line. And until we give an opportunity for Black men particularly to talk about their distrust of any kind of relationship dynamic or issue, and that is directly tied to lynching, we're going to miss the point. And I really think it's extremely important that we spend time not just with the youth, but with teachers, with administrators, with our families, our friends, about dismantling patriarchy and dismantling misogyny in this community, in our community, no one else's, because what tends to happen in relationships and relationship dynamics and safety, when we talk about these issues, is that if you ask a young person or if you ask a complete adult person, what do they think about how relationships are supposed to go? And what do they think about gender roles? And what do they think about manhood? And how do we dismantle the way in which young boys are raised? Like little boys, I'll be in a room with youth and I'll say, okay, let's pretend that we're at a hospital and you see a room full of babies that were just born. How do you know which one is a boy and which one is a girl? And they know immediately, whether we've taught them or not, whether they learned it from watching TV, television, music, radio, whatever. They say, well, we know the pink is for girls and we know blue is for boys. I'm like, what about if you're going on a date? When you're sitting there and it's time to order food, what are the girls eating? They said salad. And what are the boys eating? Steak. And then we'll say, okay, so what kind of toys are y'all playing with? You already know the answer. Dolls for girls, trucks for boys. And if you move outside of that socialized expectation and construct, then that's when problems arise in our relationships. Who takes out the garbage? Who pumps the gas? Who pays the bills? All of that needs to be unpacked in our community to prevent down the line what we're seeing and experiencing, which is an overwhelming amount of Black women dying at the hands of their partners because we're not unpacking that stuff early enough. And then you got a little boy in the classroom, he'll pull the girl's hair and the teacher will say, oh, that's just because he likes you. That's problematic.
You said
we need to stop that. We need to undo it.
You said it. You said it. Kalima, and this cannot help the phone and what we're doing on social media, what we are seeing in terms of relationships, what we're seeing, our access to the way, whether it's sexual images that was so easily attained and the way that mostly women are being trafficked and destroyed and don't have autonomy over their body. There has to be something that parents and educators have to do in order to manage, as you said, this toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, and the way that Black women are on the lowest part of the totem pole.
I want to kick this over to Omari because we don't use the term toxic masculinity, and there's a reason why.
Omari. Yeah, we tend to lean more in the direction of focusing on building and modeling healthy masculinity. When we use the word toxic, a lot of brothers get turned off by that terminology, which is unfortunate because, the term toxic masculinity doesn't mean that masculinity is toxic. It means that there are some practices and some forms of masculinity that are very unhealthy and disruptive and downright dangerous in some cases. However, we tend to focus more on modeling healthy masculinity and behavior because we like to be solution oriented. So in being solution oriented, instead of talking about and putting down the brothers that are dealing with some things, some issues, some societal training, we focus more on giving them things that they can use as tools, information they can use to help evolve their mindset or adjust their mindset as it pertains to women and girls and other men and boys. Because let's be real, if we are talking about how patriarchy works, the violence that is produced by patriarchy, it actually impacts everyone. That's why we see violence on the street between men and boys. That's why we see violence that is against women and girls. So we want to focus more on modeling that behavior because, as Kalima said, we have a lot of history to get through. We have a lot of history to sift through. to unpack, to heal from. And, you know, as long as we have a history of white women claiming that we whistled at them or raped them and destroying our Black business districts or lynching our Black men for something that most likely didn't happen, we carry that from generation to generation. And my teachings in the 80s growing up, in the 70s and the 80s growing up, was how to not get lynched. And I lived in Detroit in a neighborhood, it was all Black, you know, but it was how to not get lynched, how to not, you know, commit some of these so-called social things that Black folks aren't supposed to do to get the attention of the police or get the attention of the system to put us in position as Black men to be attacked, assaulted, killed, or imprisoned. So we always carry that. That's why when a Black man is driving down the street and he sees red, white, and blue lights in his rearview mirror, there's a paralysis that takes place. And whether that's real or not, whether that traffic stop is going to wind up being deadly or dangerous to him or not, what we do know is there's too much of a history there. So as it relates back to what Kalima was saying about us having to deal with the lynching and deal with all of the things that we had to face and still have to face sometimes, that's a reality that is almost like a recurring trauma that plays out in our heads every day. And so we have all of this.
And so, Amari, you mentioned some tools. Yes, go ahead. Because I do want to talk about the tools that you've made.
I was just going to say, at the Sasha Center, one of the things I want to say about the Sasha Center, it stands for Sexual Assault Services for Holistic Healing and Awareness. And we are aware that sexual assault happens in the context of dating and relationships. And so we service and we center, because we're a culturally specific program, on Black women who have experienced sexual trauma. And one of the things that we do, and one of the things that we are very proud of doing, is that we have consistently for the last 16 years engaged Black men on talking about intimate partner violence, sexual assault, domestic violence, and gender-based violence. And we do that on a consistent basis with our brothers. But I heard you getting ready to ask, Omari, about our prevention strategies, but some of them include just giving them space to be in a room. Because one of the things I will say about our organization is that men, last year we had our very first Detroit Manhood event where we invited men to come and bring their mentees and have a conversation about relationship safety and management. And we took them to the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, and we taught them about, the African American woman in DNA. The African woman in DNA, and how we carry the stuff that makes humanity. Black women do, and so how can you not protect and want to aspire and provide or whatever the things and have good relationships and safety with Black women, because we actually hold the DNA of humanity. But one of the things I wanted to say in particular is that we didn't just get these ideas out of anywhere. Myself and a few of our other participants and facilitators that work with us at the Sasha Center are also lead consultants on relationship safety and management for the National Basketball Association. We've been doing that for 16 years, working with professional male athletes, making sure that they transition into, participate, and get out the game whole with their family dynamics, relationships, and romantic partners, healthy and happy. And so I'll kick you back over to Omari, but I just definitely want to make sure that when people see this, they know exactly who we are and where we're coming from. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I want to know. Yes, go ahead, Omari.
I was just going to say that in our prevention work, Kalima mentioned some of the programs. But I think it's important to note that a lot of Black men, probably most Black men, feel like they don't really have a space where they can go to be vulnerable, to talk about things that really impact them on a daily basis in the society, especially Black men. So in our spaces, we create those conversations for Black men to have in a room with just Black men, where we can really kind of be honest and not worry about being performative in a room full of men who are all experiencing the same thing. For some cases, this is the first time a man has cried in front of other men without it being a funeral involved. In some cases, it's the first time a man can talk about, interpersonal relationship issues with men without feeling like they have to protect the words they choose in that process. So we really want to focus in on prevention as something that where men can really come together, have these conversations, be open, be honest, and get it out their system, because a lot of us, that's just what we are missing.
So, I teach, and I've been in a classroom on several occasions where I've gotten a note from a female student who will say, I'm not in class today because my boyfriend said he was going to come do X, Y, Z to me, and then I have to cancel class. I'm wondering, where do educators fall in all of this, especially if you're dealing with someone who might be 14, 15 years old? What's incumbent upon them these days when they see that there is a relationship that looks like it is abusive? I'll start with you, Kalima.
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. One of the things that I think educators and folks who are in school systems can start paying attention to is the dynamics that happen between teenagers. And when they say what they say, believe them. Don't make assumptions that it's just fun and games or it's just a cute little relationship. There are power and control dynamics that are happening. Now, if a student calls and says she can't come in because she's afraid, that has to be addressed. That has to be addressed, not with them both in the room at the same time. It needs to happen where there's a conversation where the information is gathered with her, and then a conversation needs to be had with the person that she's fearful of and what's happening. And that person needs to be given strategies for making sure that they can manage their emotions, understand that there are boundaries that you have to respect in relationships if you're going to be involved. I remember in particular working with young people where we do this exercise called the jacket. And what it was that we asked, do you know the difference between your boyfriend asking you to wear his jacket or his Letterman jacket because it's just you want to show off that this is your boyfriend, or is he demanding that you wear the jacket because he wants to show ownership and possession? And being able to ask those difficult questions and trust your instincts about these things. And then understanding what the cycle of violence looks like, and sometimes it's not necessarily on the hit or something like that. It could be a control factor. Like, I want the passwords to your social media. Or I saw that you were on social media liking somebody's page. What is that about? Or trying to control who and what who they hang out with, or what they do on a regular basis, or who they're spending most of their time with. If there's somebody involved and they're involved with each other, and there is this intentional, deliberate acts of control and acts of trying to isolate this person, then it's probably just not healthy. And so just being able to look at what healthy dynamics look like, what red flags might look like, what green flags might look like in a healthy relationship, those are the kind of things we need to unpack with young people. And in prevention, and what's really interesting to me is the young folks learn this stuff from us. And I'm always asking, what are we doing? How are we reinforcing these negative ways of people showing up in relationship? Are you saying, oh girl, that's cute if he likes you that way? Or really the big one is about consent too, because a lot of times boys are raised to be competitive. Boys are raised to be aggressive. Boys are expected to win. And all of these things. And so if a girl says no, to them, they don't hear no, they hear maybe, or I should keep asking. And they're not being taught that you need to be one and done. If the person says no, then stop. Not keep going until you achieve and conquer. And we haven't even processed that yet with young people.
Here's where it gets a little dicey. You have somebody who's young, they're in school, they have the same issues that an adult might have. I'm wondering, are the resources that they use similar? And then at that point, how are you getting away from the person because you're attending school with them at the end of the day? How does that play out when someone is in a violent, intimate relationship, but they're 14 and in school and they've got, friends and a circle that is very hard to build at that age, and they don't want to lose it? How does that play out?
Yeah,
I don't work in school systems. I don't want to pretend that I can answer that question. I don't have an answer in terms of how does that play out in terms of what administrations and teachers are supposed to do. However, I did serve on this panel where we were talking about ways of teaching school administrators look for when grooming is happening. But sometimes those grooming situations are happening between teachers and students. It's not, or between those who are in power and students. But I will say, and I'll let Omari answer because I know he was about to start talking. The idea is that we have to change the culture in all of the school settings, in all of the systems. And we haven't been able to change the culture and how we treat one another in terms of talking about respect and honoring people's autonomy and accepting people as they are. We haven't, until we do that, the notion or is the assumption that we make is that schools are not safe until they unpack those things.
Omari.
Yeah, and I think we have to learn how to be in community better. When I look at the school systems, and I do travel around, and I see various school systems around the country with some of the other work I do with the Black History 101 Mobile Museum. And what I do notice is that a lot of schools, they don't really have anything set up for this. As I talk to professionals at these schools, they don't plan for these scenarios like you just described in advance. It's usually a very reactionary piece that when it comes to being involved. We need parents and school boards to say in the summer, let's put our heads together and create plans for how to address these scenarios, how to notice them. As Kalima said, notice the red flags, notice the body language, notice all of these various different things that can allow us to see something that could take place. But also, if something does take place, how to address it in a manner that is already prescribed for us to deal with the situation instead of trying to deal with it on the fly, because dealing with it on the fly is where we make a lot of mistakes. As Kalima said, we're not school professionals, but what I do know is that we also have to have family, especially our men, have to start having some really serious conversations with the boys, because we talk about the girls and how the girls should respond, and that has to be taken care of as well. But what we really need to do is start teaching our boys to not be that person that needs to be a woman or a girl needs to be protected from. So let's start building our boys into men by having these conversations and putting our boys in certain types of trainings and discussions with men who are professionals in our areas that deal with unpacking these patriarchal effects that start at a young age and we carry forth into an older age. So we have to be in community a lot better than we are.
All right, I want to go to my panel. I want to start with you. I want to start with you, Rebecca. Do you have a question for one of our panelists that has to do with young people and intimate relationships and violence? All right, Rebecca. Well, you know what? While she's getting it, I'll go to you, Michael.
All right, my Detroit Facebook friends, how y'all doing? Amari and Kalima. This is Michael.
We're gonna be on Facebook,
all right,
brother.
Yeah, and I've known Amari for years, absolutely. So my question is a little complicated. So some of you all have seen my videos, and I've been dealing with for years how stereotypical images, negative stereotypical images of African Americans negatively impact us, the way we think, feel, act, and behave. And you mentioned, Kalima, us living in a white male patriarchal society. If we look at the 2017 study that dealt with adultification bias in Black girls, coming from Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Inequality, one of the things that study talked about is how U.S. adults believed that Black girls seemed older than white girls of the same age, and that Black girls needed less nurturing, less support, and less comfort, and that young Black girls know more about sex than white girls, right? So when we look at the negative corporate controlled hip hop and hypersexualized images of Black women that we see there, and negative terms that we use for them, how does that contribute to how men see Black women that can lead to abusing them, like calling the B words and H words, things like this, dehumanizing pejorative terms that oftentimes in media, in music, we're taught to mislabel Black women with. How does that contribute to this intimate partner violence, and what can we do to fight against this?
I am so glad you brought up the study from Georgetown University. It is one of our staples in terms of the research that we look at about these things. And one of the things, and I'm glad you talked about stereotypes, because one of the first things I was going to say is that to dismantle this thing within systems, we have to first believe Black women and girls. When they tell you that they are challenged, when they tell you that they're in a relationship that doesn't work, or when they tell you that they are afraid, you have to believe them. And a lot of times what's happening in systems is that Black women are not centered in that way. Black women are not believed. Black women are challenged. Black women are thought to be stronger, to be able to handle these things, and that they are the contributors to it. It's a barrier. The fact that the adultification of Black women and girls, or girls particularly, that's the barrier. It gets in the way all the time. I don't know how many times I've been asked to go into schools and systems, and the first thing they say is, we want you to help her, but your girl is fast. What makes her fast? Why are you saying that?
Right.
Because she's developing? And that's a problem. And I will tell you back home here in Detroit, is my first job was with the Detroit Police Department, working in the domestic violence and sexual assault unit. And I'm aging myself. I used to carry a pager. And in Detroit back then, when any sexual assault would happen in the city, they would bring them to DMC. And I would carry this pager that was connected to DMC. And I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to bring you back right to where we are right now. That is, there was no sense of urgency when a Black woman or girl was in the emergency room being waited to be seen, to have the rape kit collected as a result of being sexually assaulted, unless she was attached to a very powerful man who was political or in the church. If she was connected to a man, it was get down here now. If they would call me and say, oh, you can finish your lunch and just come on down, she'll be here, it was always a Black woman, always. And that was my lived professional work experience, that there was no urgency about the lived experiences of Black women and girls when it comes to intimate partner violence, assault, and rape. And it still isn't.
And all right, I've got to go on to Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones, was that Amari?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick note, just in addition to that, it's no surprise that, Michael, that this is what you quoted in the study is the truth, because we live in a country where Black people, especially Black women, when they go to the hospital, they're treated much differently than white women are, especially when it comes to the perspective of pain. How it is believed that Black women can take more pain than white women, and how the treatment towards Black people is much different than it is those who are not Black or who are not of color. So it's no surprise. But when it comes to the media part that you mentioned, Mike, I want to say that we can see images of boys, video or stills, mimicking what they see in movies and in TV all the time. That's no different when it comes to objectifying women and girls. It's no different. And the objectification and the adultification of young girls did not just start this century. It goes back to the plantation. So it's no wonder we're in the position that we're in now.
Dr. Jones DeWeaver, question for one of our panelists.
Sure, and it's kind of a two-parter, so be patient with me. But first, as it relates to young men, we're in an era where we have this sort of red pill culture, these online podcasts, gurus who just reek of misogyny. And it's led to what seems, as an outsider looking in, to just be a rebirth or an acceleration, I guess I should say, of just vile thoughts projected and things that are said, hate-filled perspectives on women and Black women in particular. And I'm wondering, with the reality of that culture, Do you see issues of violence against Black women as something that, unless we take some very strong action to counteract that, might actually be increasing in the future? That's one thing. And then the second thing I would like to ask that may be related to that is that what sort of advice can you give to men across the age spectrum around what they can do in terms of taking responsibility in their own hands to check their peers? Like, I think that what the work that you're doing is extremely important, but there are a lot of men that will never, unfortunately, get a chance to come to your programs. So what can we do to make sure that men can check their peers in real time when they see that their peers are either doing something or alluding to potentially doing something, or they see evidence of something? Because this doesn't end until men hold other men accountable, period.
All right. Omari?
Yeah. When we look at, when we look at men and the projection of violence ramping up as time goes by, we can look at the pandemic and see that during the pandemic, violence increased, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and dating violence increased during that time. With the images and the commentary that's so anti-woman that is out here, there's no way that it won't ramp up if we don't nip it in the bud as men. That's something that men have to address. Violence against women, as we know, is not a woman's issue. It's a man's issue that primarily impacts women. So we have to really take it serious. And when we look at men and how men can address it, how do we talk to our boys? How do we talk to young boys? And how do we talk to other men? We have to be honest. We have to be unafraid. We have to be brave. Sometimes we might get, clowned by our friends. Somebody might say, oh, that's Omari again. He's on that pro-woman stuff. And you just can't stop. You can't just stop because of ridicule. You have to keep going because it's important and it's necessary. And you have to call men to task. But it's best for you to get some training and some education around it before you start doing too much of that, because you have to be able to unpack it for them. You have to be able to break it down in a way that's palatable and understandable. So there are organizations, you could reach out to us at Sasha Center if you're in the Detroit area. There are organizations also nationally, like Call to Man, several different organizations, and I can provide those for you all, and we can make a list and put some of those out there for you. But we have to really get into some deep conversations, some deep education, and some deep understanding, because one problem that we have is we walk around here as grown men thinking that because we were told this when we were younger, this one thing, that it's always going to be true, or that it was even true in the first place. And the fact is, we have a lot of myths. We have a lot of bad ideologies floating around amongst men that we think are just true and tried and true because our granddaddy told them to us, or our uncle, or our football coach told us, and they are really harmful. They are really unhealthy. And we really need to have these conversations and this educational piece intact before we go out and really start addressing men and boys too much. But it's good to start somewhere. At least start by saying, look, brother, that's, you might be a little bit out of line with that. You might want to rethink that. Let's talk about it. At least you can start there.
Rebecca.
Thank you so much. This question is also for Omari. I've been talking about this topic with a lot of Black men in my life. I've had a family member in 2013 who was brutally murdered by her ex-husband, and their small children were in the home when it happened. And, even understanding 13 years later, the devastation of, all of those who are impacted. So here's my question. I hear people, using the term patriarchy. I understand it. I get it. But if we're talking to young Black men and we're using words like patriarchy, how do we have this conversation using words that could be less white coded in a way for people to really understand the thing that we're talking about in order to bring more people into this conversation?
I think that goes back to when I talked about the conversation and getting education. Education is where you understand the nuances and the dynamics of these things, right? So while you might say patriarchy as the overhanging idea or umbrella, you really get to use the more specific language, especially as we do at Sasha Center, the culturally specific language that fits our community, right? So we can, once we unpack this information and we have it, we can convert it into a cultural understanding and basically just talk how we normally talk and use the words that we normally use. But what we're doing now with those words we typically use, we're using them in a way to break down nuances that we don't commonly talk about. So what's most important is understanding the nuances and being able to convey them in a way, you know, that doesn't sound corny to the kids. It doesn't sound like, oh, this old man is just talking to me, you know, some old stuff, but really be able to communicate with them on a very cultural level. And, you know, Sasha Center, we even do cultural things at the beginning of our sessions. Like we might do libations, we might do meditation, something to ground us. And that's important. We ground ourselves. And then we have these conversations. So, yeah, the nuances are what's important.
Kalima, I want to end with you as we wrap up this conversation. I wanted to know, because you are in close contact with a lot of young people, older people, everyone across the board. For a young person, what are some best exercises that you have for a parent or a young person so that they understand that they have full autonomy over their body and to begin to recognize that they need to stand up for themselves in any situation? What can you give us as tools to begin at home today?
Absolutely. Tools that we can begin at home today. Do not be afraid to have conversations with your young people. Sometimes you have to do call and response, which is very familiar for us. If I say one thing, you know to say the other thing. If I ask you to repeat after me, you repeat after me. Engaging in African principle-centered affirmations that you matter, and that if there's anything that has happened to you, you can share it. If you are concerned or curious about how relationships should look, and if you don't feel good about a particular thing, or if you like and you feel good about a particular thing, being able to create in our household safety for us to talk about relationships. One of the first things I would say to parents is please teach your children the proper names for their body parts so that they can begin to have conversations with you when they feel something, when something's happened, when they're curious about something. Be curious and don't be afraid to get the resources that you need. There are everything that we're talking about related to domestic violence, related to prevention, related to relationship safety and management. A Black person has already written about it. Look at Aisha Shahida Simmons' work, With Love, With Accountability. Look at Dr. Jennifer Gomez's work with Cultural Betrayal. She has written an entire psychological intervention about why it's so difficult for Black men and women to disclose that they've been sexually harmed and or physically harmed and or have experienced some kind of damage because they had to witness intimate partner violence as they were growing up. All of that is available to us. I encourage parents to start reading and delving into those things, ask the right questions. Teach our young people social media literacy to be able to determine what's AI, what is doing too much online. If you're watching a particular podcast, do you leave that podcast feeling like you can trust and love the fact that there's Black love and that Black love exists? Or do you feel like you're being taught how to be more discerning or more critical of how relationships are supposed to go and who's supposed to be doing what? Help them unlearn these strict ways of thinking about how people should show up. And because I'm telling you, this femicide, this Black femicide that's happening is not just happening because people decide they want to hurt somebody. It's happening because there are some power and control dynamics there that cannot be managed, cannot be dealt with. And we got to hold it with both hands. And so I really think that it is our time when we're dealing with and talking to youth and talking about prevention is being able to literally give them an open opportunity to share with you what's really happening in their lives. Don't shut them down. Don't make assumptions that they don't know what they're talking about. Listen to them. Learn from what they're learning about on social media about how relationships are supposed to go. Interrupt the stuff that you all know is not right. We know right from wrong.
Kalima and Omari, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Thank you for all the work that you are doing at the Sasha Center there in Detroit. Very good to have you and important information. Continue the good work. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. We're not done. We got to keep going.
All right. All right. All right. We so appreciate their contribution to help end the cycles of domestic violence. Now, on Tuesday, Roland will be joined by Ayanla Benzan for a candid conversation about Black women, Black men, and domestic violence. They are even going to take your calls here on the Black Star Network. This is going to be a Black Star Network exclusive presentation. You do not want to miss this show. Make sure that you are with us again on Tuesday. All right, we are going to take a little break right now here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network, but stay with us because we will be here after the break.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey everybody, I'm TD Jakes, and I want to encourage you to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. It'll blow your mind.
All right, folks, it is time for headlines with Brittany Noble.
Police have identified the victim who died in the mass shooting at the Mall of Louisiana in Baton Rouge on Thursday. The victim was 17-year-old Martha Odom, and 5 others were injured in the incident. Baton Rouge police believe an argument between 2 groups triggered the shooting, and witnesses say the incident began in the crowded food court of a mall before escalating into gunfire. According to police, 3 of the victims, including Odom, are seniors at a high school in Lafayette, which is about 60 miles west of Baton Rouge. Police have arrested 5 suspects and are actively searching for an additional individual involved in the case. Also, the murder retrial has begun for a former White House deputy in Ohio accused of killing a Black man as he was entering his grandmother's home. Former Franklin County Deputy Jason Meade faces charges of murder and reckless homicide in the death of 23-year-old Casey Goodson Jr. Goodson was shot 6 times in the back while entering his grandmother's house on December 4th, 2020. At the time of the incident, he was carrying a Subway bag and listening to music on his AirPods. During his 2024 trial, Meade testified that Goodson waved a gun at him as the two passed each other in their cars. He claimed he pursued Goodson out of fear for his own safety and the safety of others. Meade stated that he ultimately shot Goodson, who had entered the house, because Goodson turned toward him while holding a gun. A gun was found in Goodson's possession with the safety on, but he was a legal gun owner and had a concealed carry permit. The
which was found in his wallet. And prosecutors attempted to prevent Meade from arguing self-defense, saying that Meade's actions led to Goodson's death. But the judge disagreed and allowed Meade to use self-defense as part of his defense strategy. The Trump administration is working to expand the federal death penalty by reinstating lethal injection and bringing back firing squads. In a recent report, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said that these changes reverse the restrictions on capital punishment put in place during the Biden administration. He claimed Biden's policies harmed victims and weakened the justice system. The Justice Department is also directing the Bureau of Prisons to explore other execution methods, such as electrocution and lethal gas, and to identify new locations for executions beyond the current federal sites. The administration also wants to expedite the appeals process and broaden the range of crimes eligible for the federal death penalty. President Donald Trump says Americans should expect higher gas prices for a little while as the war with Iran continues. Trump said he is in no rush to reach a peace deal, arguing the conflict hasn't hit the economy as hard as expected. Oil prices have climbed sharply since the war began, with new gas prices topping $4 a gallon nationwide. And according to a new survey, nearly 80% of Americans say they're cut spending because of all of these rising costs. An investigation into North Carolina A&T State University revealed that more than $5.1 million in student aid was improperly distributed over several years. The North Carolina Office of the State Auditor reported that funds intended for student services were allocated without proper oversight, often based on personal connections instead of merit or financial need. Auditors discovered that nearly 2/3 of the funds were awarded to out-of-state students, with more than $780,000 going to individuals affiliated with university employees. The case has now been referred to state investigators and prosecutors. And according to the American Heart Association, there's a huge need to expand CPR training within Black communities. A 2022 study by the American Heart Association found that Black and brown people are 41% less likely to receive bystander CPR than a white person in public. What's more, another study revealed by AHA this year found that there is still a high need to expand CPR education and training in Black communities. The Black Nurses Coalition from Albany, New York, has been hosting free CPR workshops to raise awareness. If you're interested in taking a CPR course, just reach out to your local Red Cross.
All right, some other headlines. After Tuesday's Democratic victory in Virginia, Republicans are still expressing their dissatisfaction, of course. In response, Georgia Republican Congressman Rick McCormick, he's proposed legislation to rejoin the Virginia cities of Arlington and Alexandria with Washington, D.C., effectively reversing an 1846 law that had returned these areas to Virginia. McCormick's proposed Make D.C. Square Again Act aims to restore the original 10-mile square District of Columbia and eliminate what he describes as the artificial advantage that Virginia Democrats have gained due to the influx of federal employees moving into Virginia. Now, Virginia's voter-approved redistricting referendum could enable Democrats, of course, to secure up to 4 additional seats in the House of Representatives as the midterm elections approach. McCormick argues that the ceding of Arlington County and the city of Alexandria to Virginia in the 1800s was unconstitutional, and his bill would rectify the situation. And finally, the Houston cop that we told you about on Tuesday, who went on that racist rant, well, of course, she has been officially fired. It's been less than a week since Ashley Gonzalez's video went viral, which showed her making racist comments about Black people. The Houston Police Department posted this statement on social media. The Houston Police Department has terminated the employment of Ashley Gonzalez. As of today, she is no longer an employee of the department. HPD holds every officer to the highest standards of integrity and conduct and will not waver in upholding these expectations. After discovering the incident, Ashley Gonzalez was immediately relieved of duty. In compliance with the state civil service laws, an investigation was conducted as fast as legally possible. The behavior exhibited by Ashley Gonzalez was abhorrent, disgusting, and entirely unacceptable. It's deeply disturbing and has no place in law enforcement in our community. I'll pick up on this one. I'm going to start with you, Michael. Now, don't make it too long. We're almost at the end of the show, but this is no surprise.
It's no surprise that she made these statements, or it's no surprise she got fired? Which one?
It would be both, actually, but I was talking about the firing. We're not surprised that she was fired.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not surprised she was fired because she was exposed. But my follow-up to this would be there should be an investigation into how long this has been going on and a review of cases where she arrested people and it brought about convictions to see if there was somehow some racial bias involved in that. And then also, I would ask the Houston Police Department to review their intake process. What type of screening process do you have for officers? Because she's not the only one. I'm telling you now, she's not the only one. Okay, so don't just let it be this one and then the other ones get to keep doing what they're doing. Now there has to be follow up to this, but these activists, Quanell X and Sister Candace Matthews and others, great job to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we are just in a place now, Rebecca, where thank goodness for the video camera for a number of reasons to see stuff like this so that we can get it out in the open. Otherwise, it would have just been her word against anybody else's. Now it's out in the open, as Michael said, and here we are. She is fired, Rebecca.
Well, Candace, I'm not going to get too excited. Let's wait and see if it gets appealed by the police union, because we have seen where bad cops have been fired, and then we've seen where they've been forced to be rehired. Also, we still have a national database on cops who've gotten fired for doing egregious things. So, I wouldn't be surprised if she runs over to Katy, Texas, and tries to get a job there.
All right, Dr. Jones DeWeaver, your thoughts about her firing?
I just have to echo what my peers had said, but I also would want this department to really do a deep internal investigation. She has peers around her. She felt comfortable. She felt really super comfortable in that video. So it makes me think that this is obviously not the first time that those opinions have been expressed. And she has, I'm sure, expressed it around others who also feel the same way in that department. This needs to be the start of a deeper investigation, not the end of one that looks at one specific person and treats it as if it's an isolated incident.
All right, and let's finally end on this, Michael. Make D.C. Square Again Act. We've got Georgia Republican Congressman Rich McCormick proposing this legislation to move everything into D.C., a place that doesn't even have representation. Your thoughts on this particular act?
Well, this is white nationalism at its best. They're like the Energizer Bunny of white supremacists. They keep going and going. They keep coming up with something new. Who thought they were going to try this? These people are trying to hold on to power. This don't have nothing to do with morality. This is a straight up bloodbath, a straight up street fight when it comes to maintaining power. And to me, it seems like they're trying to arrest power from African Americans, because Washington D.C. is still predominantly African American, if I remember correctly, and has a history of remember Marion Barry, things like this, right? African American leadership there. So and they're going back to 1846, 1847, that law there as well. Mm-hmm. So this is it. We keep seeing evidence of how white people fear our vote more than we value our vote. And this is a straight up fight for political power.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Jones DeWeaver, listen, as Michael said, this is a law that goes back to 1846. This is something that the Supreme Court has declined to hear. This has been law for a while, but does that make you comfortable that this act could not possibly be passed?
Hell to the no, don't make me comfortable. I mean, good Lord, these folks are doing, it's crazy. But to me, their impetus for this is that they're trying to undermine the political power of the state of Virginia that has turned increasingly blue. The areas that they're talking about are parts of Virginia that have a high concentration of the population overwhelmingly Democratic. They're definitely going to, in essence, as you mentioned, disenfranchise them because they're looking to put them into the district, which does not have voting power in Congress, which is not a state. And so, in essence, they are disenfranchising them, keeping the tax money, but disenfranchising them, and at the same time, making the state a little bit less blue. If you look at what just happened recently with this referendum, when we saw those numbers come in from Northern Virginia, that's what turned the tide. All right, and so that's exactly what they're looking to do. They're trying to undercut Democratic power in the state of Virginia while also disenfranchising those who live in the Northern Virginia area, who are folks who make a big difference in terms of how the state ultimately swings in close elections.
Yeah, this is something somebody would call a sore loser. Listen, Rebecca, when we look at this, the people have already spoken on Tuesday, but just as quickly as they spoke is just as quickly as we're seeing it trying to be taken away. You're going to give us our final thought this evening on this. Let me get it right. Make DC Square Again Act.
I don't think that congressman from Georgia wants to mess around with state boundaries, because we could do that. We could go there. And if we have a true fight over state boundaries, I think that map is going to look a little different. So he might want to be real careful.
All right, I will leave it at that, folks. I want to thank all of my panelists here today, Michael Imhotep, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, and Rebecca Carruthers. Thank you so much for being with us today. All right, that wraps it up for Roland Martin Unfiltered here live on the Black Star Network. It's been great being with you most of the week. Make sure to join us next week, especially on Tuesday. Ayanla is going to be here. The phone lines will be open at this very special Tuesday event where your input, as always, will matter, but we will be able to hear your voice. So we'll see you then. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.